You wake up at 3 a.m. Your mind is already running. The meeting tomorrow. The bill you haven't paid. The message you shouldn't have sent. The future that feels completely out of your hands. This is what modern anxiety feels like, and it's everywhere. But here's what most people don't know. The most powerful man in the world, a man responsible for 70 million lives, fighting wars on multiple fronts, dealing with plague, betrayal, and the slow collapse of everything around him, felt the exact same way. And he left us the manual for how he dealt with it. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and what he wrote, in private, never meant to be published, is still the most practical guide to managing anxiety ever written. Today, we're going to break it down. Before we get into the philosophy, you need to understand who this man actually was, because the context makes everything hit harder. Marcus Aurelius was Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD. At the height of his power, he controlled the largest empire on earth. He commanded armies. He decided who lived and who died. He had unlimited wealth, absolute authority, and every material comfort imaginable. And yet, he spent almost every morning writing about how to keep his mind under control. The book we know as Meditations wasn't written for us. It was his private journal, a set of reminders he wrote to himself, often on military campaigns, in a tent, while his empire was under attack. Think about that. This man, under extraordinary pressure, chose to sit down and practice philosophy, not as an academic exercise, but as a survival tool. That's the first lesson. Anxiety isn't a modern invention, and the people who've handled it best throughout history didn't deny it. They developed a system for it. The Stoics had a very specific diagnosis, and it's different from what you'll hear in most modern conversations about mental health. They believed anxiety isn't caused by what happens to you. It's caused by your judgments about what happens to you. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This sounds simple, almost too simple, but let's look at what it actually means. When you feel anxious about a presentation at work, what exactly are you anxious about? Is it the presentation itself? No, it's your prediction of what might go wrong, your judgment that failure would be catastrophic, your story about what other people will think. The event, a meeting, a conversation, a decision, is neutral. The suffering comes from the layer of interpretation you put on top of it. The Stoics called this cognitive distancing, the ability to separate what is actually happening from the meaning your mind automatically assigns to it. This isn't toxic positivity. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell himself everything was fine when it wasn't. He told himself the truth. Most of what I'm afraid of exists only in my mind. Now we get to the most powerful Stoic tool for anxiety, and it's one you can start using today. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, who was born a slave and died a free man, opened his most famous work with a single distinction. Some things are in our control, and others not. That's it. That's the whole framework. Things in your control. Your thoughts, your actions, your effort, your response, your values. Things not in your control. Other people's opinions, the economy, your health, the outcome of your work, the weather, the past. Write those two lists down and look at them honestly. Almost everything that causes you anxiety belongs in the second column. The job interview outcome, not in your control. How well you prepare, in your control. What your partner thinks of you, not in your control. How you treat them, in your control. Whether the business succeeds, not in your control. Whether you show up every day and do the work, in your control. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. Before a battle, he couldn't control whether his army would win. He could control his preparation, his leadership, and his response to whatever happened. So that's where he put his energy. When you stop directing mental energy toward things you cannot change, something interesting happens. The anxiety doesn't disappear, but it shrinks to a manageable size, because you're no longer fighting reality. You're working with it. Here's where Stoic philosophy gets genuinely counterintuitive. Modern advice about anxiety usually says, don't think about the worst case. Stay positive. Visualize success. The Stoics said the opposite. They practiced something called Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. In plain English, deliberately imagining what could go wrong. Not to spiral, not to catastrophize, but to neutralize. Here's how it works in practice. Take whatever is making you anxious right now. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst realistic outcome here? Not the fantasy disaster, the actual worst case. Now ask, could I survive that? Could I recover? Would life continue? For almost everything we worry about day to day, the answer is yes. This exercise doesn't make the fear disappear. It makes it specific, and specific fears are manageable. Vague dread is not. Seneca, another great Stoic, put it simply. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The practice of Premeditatio malorum forces your anxiety out of the abstract and into the concrete, where you can actually deal with it. The final piece of Marcus Aurelius's approach to anxiety is perhaps the most modern sounding, but he was writing about it 2,000 years before mindfulness became a wellness trend. He wrote repeatedly about the present moment, not as a spiritual concept, as a practical tool. Confine yourself to the present. Do not indulge in imagining the whole of your future life. Live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without apathy, without pretense. Anxiety lives in the future. It's a projection, a story your brain runs about something that hasn't happened yet and may never happen. Marcus understood this. Every time his mind ran into the future, into fear, into what-ifs, he brought it back to this campaign, this decision, this moment. The Stoic version of mindfulness isn't sitting in silence and clearing your mind. It's actively catching yourself when you've wandered into imaginary suffering, and returning to what's actually in front of you. So, let's bring this together. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, responsible for millions of lives, dealt with anxiety the same way you do. The difference wasn't that he had less to worry about, he had more. The difference was his framework. He separated what was in his control from what wasn't, and put his energy only into the first category. He faced worst-case scenarios directly, instead of letting them haunt him from the shadows. And he returned again and again to the only moment that actually existed, this one. These aren't ancient techniques that require years of study. They're practical tools. You can start with the dichotomy of control today. Just take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and sort your current worries into 2 columns. That single exercise done honestly will change how you start your morning. If this was useful, subscribe. We put out a new video every week, each one taking a different piece of Stoic philosophy and showing you exactly how to apply it to your real life. And if you want to go deeper right now, watch this video next. We break down Marcus Aurelius's morning routine, step by step. Ancient wisdom, modern edge.